Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself? Or did somebody kill him? That's the question that keeps coming back, again and again, no matter how many times officials insist the case is closed. In a Senate hearing, the exchange sounded almost surreal. Senator, did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself, or did somebody kill him? Director, Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center. Senator, are you going to release all the information about that? Director, Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice. Senator, when do you think you'll have it done? Like before I die. And then the line that summed up the mood of the country. Christmas ornaments, drywall, and Jeffrey Epstein. Name 3 things that don't hang themselves. That's what the American people think. Because beneath the jokes and the dark memes lies a very real suspicion. Is Epstein actually dead? If he is, did he really die by suicide? Or was he silenced because he knew too much about too many powerful people? The latest release of Department of Justice documents, surveillance footage descriptions, and internal memos has only deepened those doubts. Let's break down what we now know and what still doesn't add up. The night Epstein died, the orange figure on the stairs. Officially, Jeffrey Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell in the early morning of August 10, 2019, at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, in Manhattan, and was later pronounced dead, with the medical examiner ruling the manner of death as suicide by hanging. No exact time of death was ever conclusively established. Official reports generally state he died sometime before 6:30 a.m. But newly released Justice Department records about the night of August 9-10, 2019 have raised serious questions. In one set of documents, FBI analysts reviewing prison surveillance footage noted something strange. A flash of orange looks to be going up the L-tier stairs, could possibly be an inmate escorted up to that tier. The timestamp, 10:39 p.m. August 9, 2019. The DOJ's Office of Inspector General, OIG, reviewed the same footage and reached a different conclusion. The orange object moving up the stairs might be someone carrying inmate linen or bedding, not necessarily an inmate. But here's the problem. Official public narratives, especially those from then Attorney General Bill Barr, have repeatedly stated that no one went onto Epstein's housing tier that night before his death was discovered. None of the formal review reports mention this orange-clad figure at all. Neither of the 2 key officers on duty that night was ever asked about this figure during their 2019 interviews. So on paper, the story is, nobody went in. Nothing unusual happened. But in the internal reviews, the FBI clearly saw something, or someone, in orange heading toward the secluded locked cell tier mere hours before Epstein was found dead. That alone doesn't prove foul play, but it directly contradicts the comforting line that no one entered that area. The guards, the sleep, and the missing memory. 2 staff members were on duty that night near Epstein's area. Officer Tova Knoll, often written as Tavan/Tavanol in transcripts. Materials handler Michael Bonham, also written Bonham/Bonham. According to the DOJ records, Bonham admitted he slept during part of his shift. Officials noticed an inmate count discrepancy. The numbers didn't quite add up. Knoll told investigators she couldn't remember the details around that discrepancy. Strangely, neither of them was questioned about the orange-clad figure visible on the video going up toward Epstein's tier around 10:39 p.m. Bonham later told investigators he remembered nothing from that timeframe. An internal briefing presentation attempted to explain away the orange movement. It suggested that perhaps an officer carrying linen had gone upstairs. But when asked directly, Knoll denied ever distributing linen and said that wasn't her job. Later that night, Bonham's shift ended at midnight. He was replaced by Officer Michael Thomas, who would be the one to discover Epstein's body. Knoll stayed on for a second shift. Thomas said he found Epstein after 6:30 a.m., cut him down from an apparent noose, but couldn't recall actually removing any noose from the cell. Noel said She saw Epstein being lowered to the floor, but also did not see a noose. Evidence logs note, a shirt believed to have been cut off Epstein's body was eventually returned from the hospital. But the noose itself, the central piece of evidence in a hanging, was never definitively identified in the records the public has seen. Added up, a suspicious figure in orange going upstairs. 2 staffers sleeping or failing to recall key details. A mysterious inmate count discrepancy. No solid chain of evidence for the supposed noose. And still the official story remains, suicide by hanging. The draft death announcement, written before he died, perhaps the most startling revelation in the latest DOJ document releases, is this. A formal public statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, SDNY, about Jeffrey Epstein's death was drafted a day before he died. The draft statement is dated August 9, 2019. Epstein was officially found dead in his cell on the morning of August 10, 2019. The statement, attributed in draft form to then U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman, reads as if Epstein had already been found unresponsive and pronounced dead. Jeffrey Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell and later pronounced dead. Why would a death statement be prepared before the death? There are a few possible explanations. 1. Coincidental template prep. 2. Prosecutors and communications staff sometimes draft contingency statements in sensitive, high-risk cases. Epstein had already reportedly attempted suicide weeks earlier in July. It's possible they were preparing for the likelihood of another attempt or his potential death in custody. 3. Clerical dating error. 4. The date on the draft could be an internal mistimestamp, or documents might have been batched and misfiled. 5. Foreknowledge. 6. To conspiracy theorists, this looks like a smoking gun. A death statement written in advance suggests someone was planning or expecting his death on or around that date. Right now, we do not have definitive proof which of these is true. But the very existence of a predated statement deepens public mistrust. The Senate grilling, before I die. In a recent Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, the Bureau of Prisons director was pressed hard about Epstein's death, the files, and what justice actually looks like. The exchange went like this. Senator, did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself, or did somebody kill him? Director, Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center. Senator, are you going to release all the information about that? Director, Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice. Senator, when do you think you'll have it done? Like before I die. Director, I think in the near future, sir. We've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for public consumption. The senator didn't let go. He pivoted briefly to a deeper question. What, in your opinion, is justice? The director answered, I would assume that people are treated fairly, and that fair and equitable consequences occur if one violates the rights of another, and we should be able to anticipate that from our system. The senator countered with a simpler view. To me, justice is when someone gets what they deserve. He then pushed the director on whether crime should be viewed as a sickness that should be cured, or as a wrongful act that demands punishment. The director acknowledged, in some cases, like pedophiles and sex offenders, there may be psychiatric or mental health roots. But regardless, the consequences should match the offense. This wasn't just theoretical. It circled back to Epstein and the outrage surrounding his death. When they moved to early release and mercy, the director emphasized, the Bureau of Prisons does not control when people get out. Those decisions lie with lawmakers, judges, and policy, e.g., laws like the First Step Act. The BOP can only operate within the parameters given. The senator wasn't fully convinced. He pointed out that Congress had already given the BOP and DOJ considerable discretion in early release mechanisms. At the end of the day, they are the ones exercising judgment. Then he brought the conversation back, sharply, to Epstein. Let me just hit one last lick on Jeffrey Epstein. Christmas ornaments, drywall, and Jeffrey Epstein. Name 3 things that don't hang themselves. That's what the American people think. And they deserve some answers. He asked the director to carry a very respectful message to the FBI and the Inspector General. Tell them to prioritize the Epstein investigation conclusions. Not to rush and botch it, but not to drag their feet for years either. The director responded. She agreed the investigations should be completed as soon as possible, but insisted she has no control over the FBI or Inspector General's timelines. She can only pass along the message. The senator, not fully satisfied, gently implied he believed she knew how to be firm when she wanted something done. Suicide, murder, or something in between. So where does that leave us? Official position. Epstein died by suicide, hanging himself in his cell. The Bureau of Prisons and DOJ maintain this line. Internal investigations have led to disciplinary action against staff, policy reviews, procedural changes. The problems, however, we now also know that a mysterious orange-clad figure appears on surveillance moving toward Epstein's tier late that night. Guards were asleep, inattentive, unclear or forgetful about activity and inmate counts. The noose is poorly documented in evidence records. A draft press statement announcing Epstein's death appears to have been written the day before he was found dead. Attorney General Bill Barr's public assurance that no one entered the tier conflicts with internal notes flagging unexplained movement toward that locked area. None of this proves that Epstein was murdered, but it does show incompetence at best, omission and misrepresentation at worst. And in a case involving a man with deep ties to billionaires, royals, politicians, and the intelligence world. Allegations of blackmail, years of sweetheart deals, and unexplained leniency. Even a small inconsistency can fuel massive distrust. Here we have more than one small inconsistency. We have a chain of events that almost begs for suspicion. What do the American people deserve? The senator's closing point hangs over everything. That's what the American people think. And they deserve some answers. He's right. In any functioning system of justice, especially one that claims to stand for fairness and accountability, the public should expect a straightforward, well-documented explanation of how a high-value federal inmate died in custody. Clear accounting of who was on duty, who went where, what was recorded, what was or wasn't found. A release of all non-victim identifying information as quickly and transparently as possible. Instead, what we have so far is contradictory internal observations, sloppy redactions in related Epstein files, predated statements, vague assurances that answers will arrive in the near future. For many people, that's not good enough. Not when the case touches the British royal family, ex-presidents, billionaire tech moguls, cabinet-level officials, and a network of abusers who operated for years in plain sight, until the FBI and DOJ release a full, coherent, internally consistent timeline, more unredacted documentation about the night of Epstein's death, all relevant surveillance footage with victim privacy protected. The question will keep echoing: did Jeffrey Epstein really hang himself? Or did someone make sure he'd never talk again? Right now, the official answer remains suicide by hanging. But the evidence trail, as it stands, leaves room for doubt so large that jokes about Christmas ornaments and drywall feel, to many, less like memes, and more like the only honest expression of how little faith they have left in the system. Until the government treats that mistrust as a crisis of legitimacy and not just a PR annoyance, the conspiracies won't fade. They'll grow.